Buongiorno Mondo, and welcome back to 15 with Bosca, the podcast. I am delighted to have here with me today Elia Nichols. Buongiorno, Elia.
Buongiorno, Fosca.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
So Elia, as you know from her bio, is a professional actress. She is a public speaker, a public speaking coach, and so many other things that we are going to discuss today. But she is also a fellow U.S. expat in Italy. So as I often do, Elia, I would like, because I don't know your story, even though we know each other.
Yeah.
And we know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know your Italy story. So why don't you start by telling us how you came to Italy in the first place and what your life here looks like right now.
Sure, absolutely. So I came to Italy with my father when I was 14. It was a daddy-daughter trip. He gave my sister and I, he said, when each of you are 14, I'm going to bring you, we can go anywhere that you want to go, anywhere in the world.
Okay.
My sister chose Chicago, and I chose Italy. And you know, they were very important trips because she ended up going to Northwestern University in Chicago for her undergrad, and I ended up studying abroad in Florence, Italy, right? So these were very important trips. When my dad and I got here, I immediately fell in love with the language. I just thought it was the sexiest language I'd ever heard. And I said, Dad, I'm going to learn this language and come back. And the other thing that happened on that trip is when we came to Florence, I had this very strange feeling like there was just no culture shock. And I felt, I feel like I've been here before. You know, like, I mean, literally, I wonder if like in some past life, if I lived in Florence. And so when I went to university, my minor was Italian, my major was theater.
Right.
And I said I want to study abroad in Florence because I just felt this connection. So I did.
Okay.
Studied abroad here, met an Italian, as you do, fell in love. He was my first love. Went back, I was here a semester though.
Yeah.
Went back to America, graduated, got my undergrad degree in acting. Got my master's degree in acting as well, and then went to Los Angeles, as you do.
To start a career.
To start a career in acting. But I was still with my boyfriend.
Oh, you were doing long distance?
We had a long distance relationship for 6 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Complimenti.
Exactly. Grazie. And when I got to Los Angeles, I just hated it. It was not, LA is not for me. Louisiana is more my bag, that LA. But LA was just, it's just not my scene. And I remember having this catharsis in traffic, as you do in LA.
In LA.
Where I thought, oh my gosh, there was a bus next to me. And on the bus there was a big, long, sign.
Yeah.
For a movie, and it was this sexy woman with like a gun, and she was, holding the gun. And I looked at that sign on the bus, and I thought, oh my God, I don't want to be on that bus. I don't care about being on that bus. And I realized in that moment that I just want to do my craft. I don't really care about being famous. And really, you go to LA to be famous and to do your craft.
Right.
But I thought, I was so happy in Florence, Italy. I can do my craft anywhere, even if it's as a hobby. But I just want to be happy and I want to do it there. So I applied to every single study abroad school that existed in Florence. 2 schools called me back. 1 school gave me a job. I was supposed to help them start a theater department.
How funny.
Yes,
How
literally.
Great.
Literally. But in the year it took for me to get my work visa, that idea was folded. And so by the time I got to Florence with a legal work visa, they said, we are so sorry, but we have decided not to open the theater department, but we have a job as a housing coordinator. And I was like, I don't know anything about housing. I'm an actress, for God's sake. And they were like, yeah, but you'll
at this point,
it's a job, right?
And
you have your work visa. And I was like, okay. So I did it. I went back. I started out as a housing coordinator. Not for me.
Worst
I am not a desk.
ever. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's very stressful. It's very paper. I realized from that job that I can't be behind a desk. But they were such great employers to me. They were very loyal, and it got me back here.
Yeah.
And now I've been here 18 years.
Okay, I was going to ask you. So this was in 2006?
6, yeah.
Okay. And then, so what happens? So you're working as a housing coordinator.
Right.
Are you still managing to act somehow?
So, yes, because the first year I got here, I met 5 other women who were all expats from different countries who were either mother tongue English or had very high level of English and had worked in the theater or film business professionally. Costumers, directors, writers, actresses. Okay, all women. And we started a theater company together. A theater company in English.
Yeah, Festa.
You did Festa.
Because when I was at Stanford, we sent you interns.
You are right!
Yeah.
They were some of our first interns.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely
And I don't
remember
know
that.
how I found
That's
you.
crazy.
Or if you found me.
Right.
But I remember you and Sean.
Yes.
Because I would send you
Sean
interns.
Loftus is still, she's a co-founder with me.
I think I sent you 3 or 4 interns in those years, yeah.
That's incredible.
At least, yeah. I had a lot of students at the time who were interested in theater, and it was very exciting because also, it was the first time, I think, that there was an English language. Or,
no,
I'm not 100%
actually,
sure.
Barry Hockwald was this other woman, and we had acted together here. And she created a theater company too, like a year or 2 before we did. And then she ended up moving back to LA, and we kind of stayed.
Right.
And so we just, as theater, it never pays, right? So we did it out of love for the theater, and it feeds your soul.
Yeah.
But honestly, I would say it's the highest quality artistic work I've ever done in my life. I mean, we did such beautiful things. Not to be like arrogant or anything, but it was amazing. The productions we did. We did like Macbeth at the Bargello and
I remember
Dracula,
you guys did awesome
exactly
stuff.
at the Bargello. We did the Velveteen Rabbit at the Pergola Theater, and John Malkovich was there, and just crazy, amazing. Romeo and Juliet in the Corsini Gardens.
Oh my
beautiful
gosh.
things. From that, I got an agent. Okay. I had someone see me, and they said, I would like to represent you. They were an agent in Rome. And then from there, I started getting like one small TV show, and then a bigger one, and then films and things.
All right, so let's talk about the bigger one, because as you now know, my daughter is a huge fan of the show.
Right.
And it's funny because she's heard your name now for like a year and a half. I'm like, I'm meeting Elia. That was on the phone with Elia. And then all of a sudden she finds out that Elia was actually the lead role in one of her favorite sort of sitcoms. When she was growing up, and then she still watches it.
Hilarious.
So tell me, so this is a big deal because it was a big part of her formation. She was born in 2007, so she's the exact demographic that was watching that show.
Right.
And she tells me that she still goes back on Netflix and watches it, and that she loves you. She loves your character.
Oh my gosh.
So this was a big deal for you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that leap.
It's so funny because when I moved here, I thought I kind of made peace with myself, and I said, I can do acting as a hobby and still be happy. And I was, honestly. But then when I got an agent and I got a small role in a TV show, and they loved me, and the producers were like, and it was in English, it was shot in English, and they called me a few years later and they said, Elia, we have a much bigger TV show. It's shot in Italian, but that's not a problem because you're fluent in Italian. And we think you're perfect for one of the roles. Would you audition? I said, I would love that. But I just had a baby 8 months ago. So I'm like actually literally, I think I just got out of maternity leave. And I was like, and they were like, just come and do it, okay? Just do the audition. We'll deal with the baby stuff later. And I was like, all right. And I think because I thought this isn't possible. Like, how would you have a baby and shoot in Rome? Because it was shot at Cinecittà, which is, that's where all of the great Italian movies were made. Zeffirelli worked there, right? Fellini. I mean, Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Pepper.
Scorsese, Gangs of New York. It's a big deal.
It's the Universal Studios of Italy, right?
It's
so we were literally, the TV show was shot there, and my audition was there. I went and auditioned. I think I was in a mental space of this probably isn't going to work, so who cares, right? But it was a perfect role for me. When I read it, I went, oh yeah, I got this. I know her. And she was basically she was the meanie. She was the bad, mean professor. I do love villain roles, I will tell you. My favorite roles are villains or very naughty people.
She's a meanie.
She's a meanie. With a heart of gold, but you see it rarely. And so I went in there and I just kind of kicked butt. And most of the time when you finish an audition, you have no idea how it went. Like sometimes you get jobs and you thought, that was a terrible audition, and you get the gig. Sometimes you are amazing and you still don't get it. This one, I did it. I remember the director, I walked in, he was like, okay, introduce yourself. We shot the introduction. He said, okay, do you want to look over your lines? Are you ready? Because it was a big scene. There were lots and lots of lines. I said, no, I think I got it. I mean, I was just so relaxed. It's not always like this, right?
Oh.
And I did it just kind of perfectly. And I remembered every single line. I mean, delivered it so well. And he looked at me and he was like, wow, okay. I think that was pretty perfect. Do we just want to do one more take just to see another side? I was like, sure. I did it a different way. He was like, great. They called me like 5 days later and they were like, Elia, you have the role. And I was like, wait a minute. I have a 9-month-old baby. What? But whatever,
So how did
was
you
amazing.
How did you work that out? Okay, so the show is called Maggie and Bianca Fashion Friends.
Maggie and Bianca Fashion Friends,
and
right.
now it's on Netflix.
Right.
And can be watched anywhere in the world in all sorts of languages that your beautiful voice has been dubbed into.
Thank you,
But so how were you dealing? This is not easy because logistically Rome it's not that far away.
No.
By American standards, I think it's a fairly average commute. So how often a week did you have to shoot? What did you do with your son? Like how were you juggling all these things? It's not easy as a new mom all.
Yeah. Well, we got a nanny for the days when I was in Rome. But, with filming, I mean, anybody that's in the industry knows there's no regularity. So one week I would shoot 2 days a week. 1 week I would shoot 5 days a week. 1 week I would shoot 1 day a week. 1 week I would shoot 3, right? Every single week it was different. And we just were lucky enough to have found this amazing nanny who was available. She was just available, and she could just kind of come whenever. I mean, it was a miracle.
Lucky.
Miracle. The other thing that was a miracle is that our apartment at the time was a 10-minute walk from the station. So I could literally put my child to bed at night at they're babies, so 7:30, walk to the station, because Kelly, my husband, would be home by then, get on the train, stay in the hotel, wake up at 6 in the morning because we had early pickups, shoot. If I had a 1 day shoot, I could be home to put my son to bed because it's an 1.5-hour train ride to Rome. I would learn my lines on the train. Right. They were all in Italian. Yes. But I would just sit there with headphones on and be like, no, ti do it. Repeat over and over. And the people around me would look at me like as if I were crazy. And it was perfect. Also because at that point in maternity leave, I was going a little crazy. And I needed
I went back to work when John was 8 months.
Yes.
Just FYI.
Yeah, it was perfect.
And I had a full-time nanny too, which you need. I mean, if you're a very busy person, as we both are and were with little kids, there's no other way, especially we're far away from our families. There's no way to do it. There's just no way to do it.
It restored my sanity. I mean, it was the best thing for me.
Oh,
I would go, I would have one night in a hotel, I would shoot. I think I had the best role. I mean, I think she is just so much fun. She's mean, she's, kind of evil, and then she's really quirky and weird and eccentric and a blast, and then she has this heart of gold. So, I mean, it was such a huge experience. I had the best colleagues. Oh, it was amazing.
So how many years did that show go on? It was
a
while.
We had 3 seasons, so it was about 2.5 years of shooting.
Wow.
And I had to quit. They had to write me out of the script in the 3rd season because I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. And Professor Tucker cannot be pregnant, right? That is just not okay. And you could finally see, they were putting me in these bags.
It didn't groove with her personality.
It did not groove.
Because she wasn't motherly.
And, we're shooting in the country where the Vatican is, right? You can't be pregnant and single in a TV show like that. No. So, and Professor Tucker was single. So they were literally dressing me in bags because that was the way to hide the belly. And they would shoot me behind tables, but at a certain point there was just no more hiding it. Aww. So they had to write me out of the script, but that ended up being the last season anyway.
Okay. See, everything happens
and
for a
reason.
Yeah,
exactly.
You weren't there to carry the show anymore.
Yes, but it's okay. I feel like I had explored everything that I could explore in her character, and I have such amazing memories. It's really cool because it's still on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids still recognize me all the time, every day, you know, and that's beautiful.
So people come up to you
all the time.
and they're like, "Oh my God."
Oh yeah, they're always the same. You can tell, you can tell by their eyes first because their eyes get really wide and they're like, and then like one person in the group who's the bold one, either kid or the parent, comes up and says, "Excuse me, are you an actress? Are you Professor Tucker?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." You know,
That's so funny. But I'm telling you, it's like it was a big show. Like for those out there who do not know, for that age group, for the demographic of my daughter's generation. So she was born in 2007. That show, and I didn't make the connection obviously because I was like, "Oh yeah, I know Elia was on some TV show, but I don't watch TV." And then I was like, "Oh wait, it was."
Well, you're not watching like a teeny bopper,
right? But I had watched it because and then when I was doing research for the podcast. And that's when this all came out. And I said to my daughter, "Oh, what's this show, Maggie and Bianca Fashion?" She's like, "Mom, I used to watch it all the time. You know what show it is." And so when I went, she's like, "You need to watch it now on Netflix, the whole first season. Binge it." I'm like, "All right, I'll just watch a little the first episode."
It's really not necessary.
Right. But then it all came back to me. Remembering her watching the show, like maybe while I was preparing dinner or whatever. It was a big part of her childhood. So thank you for that. So then, so the show ends, you're pregnant. What happens now?
I had Virginia, which is our second. And then, I would say around the same time, I would say about about 6 months of maternity leave, I start getting itchy. So it was around that time, and Kelly and I were chatting one night, and he had a client, as you said earlier, he's a lawyer, and he had a client who was a coach. I can't remember if he was a corporate coach or a business coach or whatever, life coach. He was like, "Elle, what's a coach?" And I went, "Well, it's a person that has lots of different expertise and they guide you in a certain direction to make sure that you fulfill your dreams and, your goals and don't get distracted by other things, right? But it's not a psychologist." And he was like, "Oh, well, couldn't you do that like for public speaking?" Because, I wasn't working because I was still on maternity leave, but I knew that with 2 young kids, it probably wasn't realistic to go back to the type of acting schedule I was doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now we lived in the countryside, so there wasn't,
Things were a little more
it was
complicated.
further away from the train station, yeah, exactly, much more complicated. And I thought, I just wanted to be present for my children. I didn't want to hire a full-time nanny to kind of become the mom,
You wanted flexibility.
I completely understand people that do that, but that's just not what I wanted to be a mom.
Sure.
And I wanted flexibility, exactly. And I wanted to work part-time so I could still pick the kids up from school and be a present wife and, So I had always been a professor and an actress, always. When I was 22, I was a professor because when I was getting my master's, they made us teach undergrad.
Yeah, same.
So I taught body language, voice classes, and fundamentals of speaking classes. And when I got here, very early on, they asked me to teach public speaking classes. So I've always been a professor and an actress.
Okay.
And I love it, actually, because I take all of my skills from the theater and camera work, and I teach people to be better public speakers or podcast performers or presenters or whatever it is, right? Communication. Using everything that I've learned from theater and film.
Right.
So it's not far from my love and my world, but I get to coach people to be better communicators, which is totally amazing, and it's so much fun.
It's also, can I just say, it's very necessary. Public speaking is an issue, a huge problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And,
it's the number one fear in the world of the
really?
average person. Oh yeah. Number 2 is death. Literally.
My number 1 is death. Public speaking is not even anywhere in my top 10. I doubt it is for you too.
No,
but
we're
that's
rare.
But that's so interesting. I never would have guessed that.
No, there's this hilarious Jerry Seinfeld moment, in his stand-up routine where he says, I read somewhere that people's number 1 fear is public speaking. I find that amazing. Number 2 is death. Death is number 2? That means that if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Right? He has this hilarious sketch.
I love Jerry Seinfeld.
But the study is real.
Yeah. Oh no, I believe now that
Crazy.
Now that I know you, And now that I've also seen your TED Talk, which we're going to talk about in a second, which helped me so much, really. You know that. We've already talked about it, but I want you to talk about it. I saw it I've seen it for many years. The public speaking thing is an issue.
Yeah.
It was an issue for some of my students, although as Americans, I think we're better prepared for public speaking.
Yes.
The problem was often lectures in Italian. Oh,
And speeches.
my goodness.
Speeches.
Any kind of talks, any kind of speeches that were in Italian, but often in English, that were positively horrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you find, thanks to, Michele has this sort of idea that you could fill a need in a market. Yeah. And so how do you pivot?
So it was 2019. So it was
Recently.
It was 5 years ago. And I just started. I got my Partita IVA, which is, the code that allows you to be a freelancer in Italy. And I just started getting the word out there, putting the word out there. And immediately, it was just amazing. The European University Institute was looking for a public speaking coach or professor to come and teach their staff.
Amazing.
I knew someone that worked there, and they were, Elia, didn't you just start a business in this? I said, yes. And they said, we're looking for it. So within 2 or 3 months, I was working on a weekly basis, this really high level, coaching and teaching workshops, and it was amazing. And from there, it just took off.
Amazing.
Off. And now, I get to say no sometimes to clients so now it's really neat because I have individual clients who are politicians, CEOs, heads of organizations, even just regular people that work inside organizations who are managers who have to speak often and they're afraid, they have anxiety, or they just don't know how to do it well, right? And so that's the individual work. I even have people that, like you, have an important social media presence and don't trust themselves in front of the camera, right? Or behind the microphone. And then I have bigger clients like corporations and companies, who do regular, from training development departments, obviously, that do regular trainings.
And so what does that consist of? Like, give me an example when you go into a corporation call, because I get it on the individual level, and I think it's actually so useful for all of us. And we'll talk about, again, the TED Talk in a second, because I learned so much, and I'm not one of those people who has the fear. But what do corporations call you in to do?
They call me in to do big group trainings. Actually, it's not big groups, but my magic number is 8. So it's like 6 to 10 people, group trainings for presentations mainly. Because conferences and congresses, they haven't really started again in the same way. They haven't taken root in the same way that they did before COVID,
the pandemic,
right? So really now the presence is presentations online and in person, PowerPoint presentations, not as much formal speeches. And so like yesterday, I did a training on storytelling. In 2 days, I'm going to be doing another training on how to present to the C-suite, to the executive board. And then I do just good old basic trainings on public speaking so that every time people have to stand up in a team meeting and give a little report or give a presentation, they can do it in an engaging way. Because the fascinating thing is that Italians, I have clients from all over the world. I have corporations in America, I have corporations in Italy, Greece, blah, blah, blah. But the fascinating thing, and I'm sure you will agree with me on this, is that Italians are probably the most dynamic, charismatic communicators in the world. I think most people would agree with that. Because they're full body. Their hands are alive, their voice, they have an enormous vocal variety in their
extremely
voice.
Expressive.
The
language is musical.
They're emotional, they're logical. They're really wonderful communicators. They're funny, they're sarcastic. But you get them on a stage and all of that great personality disappears. And this strange formality takes place. Italians are not formal people. But if you put them on a stage or in front of, a room, they become very formal. Their hands stop moving and their voices become monotone.
Wow.
And so they're boring. I'm not saying all of them, obviously, but it's such a shame because they are the most dynamic, charismatic people in conversation. Much more than Americans, much more than Brits, right? Much more than so many. But something happens when they get on stage.
Interesting.
I think part of it is the role model because there is a formality of presentation in Italy.
There's a cultural
cultural expectation.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to match that. but it doesn't work. Nowadays we have 7 seconds to get the audience's attention.
7?
7.
Elia?
It used to be 5 minutes. With the advent of social media, with all the swiping, our attention span has gone down to 7 seconds. So if you don't get your audience's attention in 7 seconds,
That's it, they're gone.
You've gone, and they're going to pick up their cell phone
Yeah.
and do that, right? Which is what you often see, in audiences. You see people with their cell phones out instead of listening to a speaker. Well, what the Italian cultural kind of norm is that you're supposed to spend the first 2 to 5 minutes thanking everybody in the room. You thank the sponsors,
That's right.
you thank who asked you to speak, you thank your colleagues. Well, you have lost your audience from the first moment that way, right? So I bring in all these, kind of American and proven ways to get people's attention and keep it.
Right.
And then I get to apply all the fun theatrical stuff. So what to do with your body language, what to do with your voice. Italians don't need the body language. They're amazing with that. I always tell all of my foreign clients, watch the Italians. Study their gestures.
Exactly.
Because they're brilliant at it.
Thank you once again for tuning in to this week's episode of 15 with Fosca and for continuing to do so. Grazie mille e alla prossima volta.